50,000 voices waiting for her to break. The hippodrome of Constantinople stretched around her like a living, breathing beast. Stone seats rose high on every side, packed with men, women, and children. Their shouts, laughter, and insults echoed endlessly, bouncing off the walls, becoming a monstrous roar that seemed to press against her chest. She was on the sand, kneeling on hands and knees, her wrists and ankles bound with iron shackles. The metal bit into her skin, leaving angry red marks that throbbed with every small movement. Sweat ran down her face, stung her eyes, and mixed with dust and dried blood from earlier lashes. The sun was unrelenting, and the heat of the sand burned through the thin rags she wore. Helena's muscles ached, her back was sore, her chest heaved with rapid, shallow breaths. Every second felt like a year. The hippodrome was alive with history. Helena had been told stories as a child about this place, of races, triumphs, and celebrations. But now she understood the other truth, the one they never spoke of. It was not just a place of sport, it was a place of control. A stage where the empire displayed power, where fear became entertainment, and where no one was safe if they or their family opposed authority. A sound behind her made her heart stop. Heavy footsteps, snorts, and the clatter of hooves grew louder. Her stomach twisted. She tried to turn, but the chains prevented it. She could only feel the presence behind her. Imagine the creature, a massive bull, its body thick with muscle, horns curved and gleaming, nostrils flaring. Her mind raced through every story of animals attacking humans, and her fear multiplied. Time slowed. The crowd's chanting rose and fell, sometimes like a wave, sometimes like a hammer against her skull. They had come for this spectacle. They wanted her fear. They wanted her humiliation. Helena closed her eyes, wishing for anything. Darkness, sleep, even death, anything to escape the unbearable tension. She remembered her family, the dinners filled with conversation and laughter, her father's strict but fair guidance, her mother's gentle voice. She remembered her betrothed, a young nobleman who had fought for her family's position in the blue faction. She remembered the silk of her gown, the way it had shimmered in candlelight. All of it seemed from another life, a life that belonged to someone else. Now she was here, naked except for tattered rags, kneeling before a crowd that wanted to destroy her. The Byzantines had perfected fear. Every chain, every glare from the guards, every shout from the audience was part of a larger plan. Helena understood that this was not random cruelty. It was deliberate. The empire, the factions, the emperor himself, all had chosen her as a warning. She could be alive at the end of this day, yet completely destroyed in mind and spirit. The bull moved closer, guided by the guards with ropes and shouts. Its hooves scraped the sand, sending vibrations up through her knees. She could smell its musky breath, feel the heat of its massive body behind her. She imagined it lunging at her at any moment. Her scream finally escaped, raw and desperate, but it did not help. The crowd only roared louder, eager for her terror. Helena's eyes filled with tears. She tried to focus on breathing slowly, trying to hold on to some shred of control, but each second stretched endlessly. She could feel her pulse in her temples, each beat a reminder that she was alive and exposed, every nerve screaming with fear. The arena itself seemed to watch her. The sand beneath her hands and knees had soaked up centuries of blood, sweat, and fear. Helena could almost feel the ghosts of those who had suffered here before her, whispering warnings into her mind. Her chains rattled slightly as she tried to adjust. The metal cut into her wrists again, and her palms scraped against the rough sand. She was painfully aware of her own fragility, the vulnerability of a human body trapped against something so immense, so powerful. The Hippodrome was no longer a place of games. It was a crucible of psychological terror, a theater of control where every spectator became part of the empire's plan. Helena thought of the stories she had heard about the Nika riots, where tens of thousands of people had been massacred in this very arena. Justinian had used the Hippodrome to show his power, to remind citizens that defiance would bring ruin, and that mercy was reserved only for those who obeyed. Women of noble families had been paraded, humiliated, sometimes broken in mind if not in body. She realized that she was about to be another part of this dark history, a lesson for all who watched. The crowd's chants grew louder, rhythmic and hypnotic. Helena could not understand the words over the roar, but she did not need to. She knew their meaning. They did not cheer for life or mercy. They were here to see fear, to watch power displayed, to witness a person rendered small before the empire. The anticipation of pain became unbearable. Helena felt her mind splitting between reality and imagination. Each possible horror played out in her thoughts, each one more vivid than the last. The bull's massive head lowered slightly, its hot breath brushing her back. It was so close she could feel the heat radiating from its body. She imagined it lunging at her at any moment. Her scream finally escaped, raw and desperate, but it did not help. The crowd only roared louder, eager for her terror. Helena's eyes filled with tears. She tried to focus on breathing slowly, trying to hold on to some shred of control. But each second stretched endlessly. She could feel her pulse in her temples, each beat a reminder that she was alive and exposed, every nerve screaming with fear. The arena itself seemed to watch her. The sand beneath her hands and knees had soaked up centuries of blood, sweat, and fear. Helena could almost feel the ghosts of those who had suffered here before her, whispering warnings into her mind. Her chains rattled slightly as she tried to adjust. The metal cut into her wrists again, and her palms scraped against the rough sand. She was painfully aware of her own fragility, the vulnerability of a human body trapped against something so immense, so powerful. The Hippodrome was no longer a place of games. It was a crucible of psychological terror, a theater of control where every spectator became part of the empire's plan. Helena thought of the stories she had heard about the Nika riots, where tens of thousands of people had been massacred in this very arena. Justinian had used the Hippodrome to show his power, to remind citizens that defiance would bring ruin, and that mercy was reserved only for those who obeyed. Women of noble families had been paraded, humiliated, sometimes broken in mind if not in body. She realized that she was about to be another part of this dark history, a lesson for all who watched. The crowd's chants grew louder, rhythmic and hypnotic. Helena could not understand the words over the roar, but she did not need to. She knew their meaning. They did not cheer for life or mercy. They were here to see fear, to watch power displayed, to witness a person rendered small before the empire. The anticipation of pain became unbearable. Helena felt her mind splitting between reality and imagination. Each possible horror played out in her thoughts, each one more vivid than the last. The bull's massive head lowered slightly, its hot breath brushing her back. It was so close she could feel the heat radiating from its body. She imagined it lunging at her at any moment. Her scream finally escaped, raw and desperate, but it did not help. The crowd only roared louder, eager for her terror. Helena's eyes filled with tears. She tried to focus on breathing slowly, trying to hold on to some shred of control. But each second stretched endlessly. She could feel her pulse in her temples, each beat a reminder that she was alive and exposed, every nerve screaming with fear. The arena itself seemed to watch her. The sand beneath her hands and knees had soaked up centuries of blood, sweat, and fear. Helena could almost feel the ghosts of those who had suffered here before her, whispering warnings into her mind. Her chains rattled slightly as she tried to adjust. The metal cut into her wrists again, and her palms scraped against the rough sand. She was painfully aware of her own fragility, the vulnerability of a human body trapped against something so immense, so powerful. The Hippodrome was no longer a place of game. It was a crucible of psychological terror, a theater of control, where every spectator became part of the Empire's plan. Helena thought of the stories she had heard about the Nika riots, where tens of thousands of people had been massacred in this very arena. Justinian had used the Hippodrome to show his power, to remind citizens that defiance would bring ruin and that mercy was reserved only for those who obeyed. Women of noble families had been paraded, humiliated, sometimes broken in mind if not in body. She realized she was about to be another part of this dark history, a lesson for all who watched. The crowd's chants grew louder, rhythmic and hypnotic. Helena could not understand the words over the roar, but she did not need to. She knew their meaning. They did not cheer for life or mercy. They were here to see fear, to watch power displayed, to witness a person rendered small before the empire. The anticipation of pain became unbearable. Helena felt her mind splitting between reality and imagination. Every possible horror played out in her thoughts, each one more vivid than the last. The bull's massive head lowered slightly, its hot breath brushing her back. It was so close she could feel the heat radiating from its body. The guards moved carefully, controlling it with ropes, making sure it did not touch her, but letting her fear dominate. Helena's sobs shook her body. She had never felt so completely powerless. Yet even in her terror, a strange clarity emerged. She understood the cruelty of the Byzantines, their mastery of spectacle and fear, the intertwining of politics, punishment, and entertainment. Every moment was calculated, every second designed to make her and anyone watching remember that disobedience had consequences. And then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, the bull began to move backward. Helena's muscles, once tense as bowstrings, relaxed slightly. But the relief was fleeting. She was still chained, still kneeling in the sand, still exposed to the eyes of 50,000 people. Her terror had been experienced, witnessed, remembered. She had survived the bull, but the moment of psychological destruction had passed into history. The empire had achieved its goal. The sun continued to beat down on her back. Sweat and dust mingled with tears on her cheeks. She had been broken, humiliated, forced to face the abyss of fear alone, with thousands watching. Helena understood in that moment that the Hippodrome was more than an arena. It was a machine for control, for obedience, for power, and she had become a part of its terrible legacy. The Hippodrome had always been more than a building. It was a living monument to power, violence, and control. Helena, still on her knees, could feel its history pressing down on her as heavily as the sun. Every stone seemed to hum with the memory of centuries, victories celebrated, lives destroyed, and screams echoing through time. This place had seen emperors rise and fall, factions clash in streets and stands, and ordinary citizens caught in the middle of forces much larger than themselves. As she knelt there, chained and exposed, Helena tried to comprehend the sheer scale of what she was experiencing. The arena was massive, stretching 400 meters long and over 100 meters wide. The fine sand under her hands had been imported from Egypt, carefully chosen and maintained for generations. It gleamed in the sunlight, deceptively soft, but it was soaked with the memory of blood and fear. Below her knuckles, it felt almost alive, as if it remembered every cry, every punishment, every humiliation that had occurred on this ground. Around her, the crowd surged like a single organism, 50,000 individuals bound together by expectation and fear. Their faces blurred into a sea of shapes and colors, their chants a constant vibration in her skull. Some wore the colors of factions, blues and greens, their loyalty marking them as participants in a political theater far older than Helena could fully grasp. The faction system, she now realized, was not merely about sports. It was the lifeblood of the empire's control, a network of influence and intimidation that spread from family to family, neighborhood to neighborhood. She remembered stories from her youth, how the blues and greens had started as racing teams, harmless supporters of chariot drivers. Over time, however, they had grown into something more dangerous. Faction loyalty had become identity itself. To oppose your faction was to risk death. To cross the wrong people could result in exile, humiliation, or worse. Helena's family had been staunch supporters of the blues, tied by marriage, alliances, and debts of loyalty to the network of power that shaped the city. And now she was here because her family, her bloodline, her name had made her a target. Behind her, the bull had been withdrawn, guided back toward the gates by the guards. Helena's body shook from the intensity of the fear she had just endured. She thought it was over, but she knew in her bones that this was only the beginning. The empire did not merely punish for survival's sake. It punished to teach, to terrify, and to enforce obedience. She was a lesson. Her terror, the fear that she had felt so completely, had become a message to every other woman, every noble, every family that dared challenge the hierarchy of power. The air in the arena was thick with tension, sweat, and dust. She could smell the faint coppery scent of old blood that had soaked into the sand. She could feel the eyes of the crowd on her, imagined or real, piercing her skin. Every whisper, every shout, every clatter from the stands became a reminder of her vulnerability. Even the guards, who moments ago controlled the bull with precision, now seemed to watch her with detached interest. Their role was not merely to enforce order, it was to maintain fear. Helena's thoughts drifted to the women who had come before her, victims of this system of control. The chronicles she had heard mentioned noble women paraded through the arena in sackcloth, their hair hacked off, their dignity stripped before the eyes of thousands. They had committed no crimes of their own, only being born into the wrong family, aligned with the wrong faction, or angering the wrong person. Helena felt an unsteady kinship with them, though she did not know their names. Their suffering, repeated over centuries, had become ritualized terror. She tried to focus on her breathing, slow and deliberate. 1, 2, 3. The simple rhythm helped her resist the panic threatening to consume her. But even as she counted, the history of the Hippodrome pressed into her mind. She imagined the Nika riots of 532 AD, where tens of thousands had been killed in the stands in a single day. Justinian had used the hippodrome not only as a venue for sport, but as a tool of political supremacy. The massacre had been methodical, precise, terrifying. And now, centuries later, she understood that the methods had evolved. Fear itself could be weaponized. Helena was the instrument, the victim, and the spectacle, all at once. The guards shifted slightly behind her. She could hear their boots scraping the sand, the soft rustle of fabric and armor. They were waiting for instructions, ready to act at the emperor's command, or perhaps at the whim of those in power. The bull, now calm, rested behind the barriers, but its presence lingered in Helena's mind, a shadow of looming threat. The audience, their bloodlust temporarily sated, had begun to murmur again, leaning forward in anticipation of what would come next. Helena's muscles ached from kneeling, her wrists raw from the chains. Every nerve in her body screamed with exhaustion and fear. Yet she understood the empire's logic. By holding her there, forcing her to confront terror, exposing her to the gaze of thousands, the empire achieved something permanent. They did not merely punish the body, they punished the mind, the social identity, the very essence of a person. Every spectator would remember her. Every whisper of her ordeal would echo beyond the arena walls. She had become a story, a warning carved into collective memory. The sun continued its relentless descent, bathing the arena in a harsh, golden light. Shadows stretched across the sand, and she could feel them creeping across her skin like invisible hands. She thought about what awaited her in the coming hours, what other horrors the empire had prepared. Even if she survived physically, she knew she would not survive the memory of this day. Fear had become a permanent companion, a shadow she could not escape. Helena's mind returned to her family one last time. She thought of the smiles, the voices, the warmth she had once known. She wondered if they understood what was happening to her, or if they were safe. The thought brought tears to her eyes, hot and bitter, cutting through the dust and sweat. She had become a link in a chain of historical cruelty, a single life made into a symbol of control. And she understood with terrifying clarity that the empire did not make mistakes. Every step, every moment, every heartbeat had been calculated to ensure maximum impact, not just on her, but on everyone who witnessed her fear. In that moment, Helena understood the true weight of history. The hippodrome was not merely an arena. It was a machine, finely tuned over centuries, designed to shape minds, enforce obedience, and ensure power. And she was at its center, kneeling, shackled, a single human soul reduced to pure terror. The sun beat down, the crowd waited, and Helena, trembling and broken, realized that the world she had known, her family, her faction, her life, was gone. All that was left was fear and the knowledge that she had become history.
Helena's body still trembled as she struggled to rise to her knees. Each movement was agony. The iron shackles cut deeper into her skin. Her muscles protested every inch. Yet her mind raced faster than ever, trying to make sense of the terrors she had endured and the greater web in which she was entangled. This was not chaos, it was design. Every chain, every shout, every presence in the hippodrome was a calculated instrument of control. The hippodrome itself was like a living, breathing organism. Beneath the open arena floor lay a labyrinth of corridors, storage rooms, and holding cells. Most citizens never saw them, and many didn't want to. But Helena had caught glimpses in her brief moments of awareness. The dark tunnels where previous victims had been held, where they had awaited their turn in torment. It was infrastructure not for sport, but for state terror. Every brick and beam had been placed with purpose, every tunnel designed for maximum efficiency in the capture, transport, and display of obedience or punishment. Her mind turned back to the factions, the blues and the greens. The chariot teams had long become symbols of loyalty and power, but the empire had learned to use them as weapons of control. Faction loyalty dictated life and death. Citizens were born into allegiance, a rule as strict and unyielding as the iron shackles binding her wrists. To cross the wrong line could mean exile, humiliation, or death. The Nika riots had shown how deadly that could be. Helena remembered reading about that day. 50,000 people, unified in defiance, slaughtered in the stands. The empire had used fear to crush opposition, and the lesson had not been lost on anyone watching from the sidelines. The Hippodrome was more than a venue. It was a machine for public submission. Every performance, every spectacle was designed to teach obedience. Public punishments, humiliations, and even executions were orchestrated with precision, not chaos. Helena's own ordeal with the bull was proof. She had survived, yet the memory of it would haunt her, a permanent warning. The empire did not merely punish bodies, it punished minds, identities, and social status. Helena had learned what few were ever allowed to know. The Hippodrome was where power was displayed, where history was written in flesh and fear. The crowd murmured again, a rolling wave of voices, eager for the next act. Helena could feel their eyes, imagined or real, piercing her back, her shoulders, every exposed inch. Each spectator was a participant in the empire's design, their applause, laughter, or jeers reinforcing the lesson. Ordinary people had become instruments of terror, unwittingly enforcing the will of emperors and generals. The Byzantines had understood a fundamental truth. When people participated in cruelty, even indirectly, they became invested. They remembered. They learned. They feared. Helena's thoughts turned to those women who had come before her, victims of similar spectacles, paraded through the Hippodrome in disgrace. Their hair shorn, their dignity stripped, their names spoken aloud as if they were objects rather than people. Women had always been particular targets. The empire understood the power of shame, the vulnerability of social status, and how completely humiliation could dismantle a person's identity. Helena's position, chained and exposed, was designed to echo these ancient methods. Psychological terror more than physical harm, a long-lasting wound inflicted by fear and exposure, rather than steel. The sun beat down mercilessly. Sweat ran into her eyes, burned her cheeks, and soaked the rags that clung to her skin. She had no water, no comfort, no reprieve. The very air seemed hostile, thick with heat and dust. And above all, the sound of the crowd persisted, a constant reminder of the thousands of witnesses who would remember her fear, whisper her name, and relay the story in hushed tones. The Hippodrome made private terror public. It ensured that no act of defiance went unpunished, that every observer knew exactly the cost of challenging authority. Helena's mind wandered to the stories she had heard of blinding, of chariots dragging victims, of public humiliations designed to destroy identity without necessarily killing the body. These acts were carefully calculated, performed in front of large audiences to maximize psychological impact. The empire had refined these methods over centuries. They were not barbaric accidents. They were deliberate tools of power, and she was now intimately familiar with their effect. Fear, she realized, was more potent than any blade. The anticipation, the uncertainty, the knowledge that thousands watched, these were the instruments of control that the Hippodrome wielded with frightening mastery. She struggled to focus on her breathing, on any rhythm that might calm her racing heart. But every inhale reminded her of the heat, every exhale of the stench of sweat and blood in the arena. Her mind clung to fleeting memories of home, her family, and the life she had known. They felt like a fragile shield against the storm of fear and history pressing in on her. Yet even these memories could not fully protect her. Helena understood that the Hippodrome did not merely punish an individual. It shaped society itself. Every act performed within its walls rippled outward, teaching obedience, enforcing loyalty, and cementing the power of those at the top. The guards moved quietly around her, their presence a reminder that the empire's control was immediate and unyielding. They carried the authority of the emperor in their eyes, their movements precise and calculated. Helena could sense their skill in managing the bull earlier, their ability to manipulate the environment of terror. The empire had trained them not only to enforce order, but to create spectacle. Every detail mattered. Every second was choreographed to ensure maximum psychological impact. Helena, trembling, realized she had become a part of a centuries-old system of human experience designed for submission. Even as the immediate threat of the bull had passed, Helena could feel the anticipation building again. She did not know what the next act would be, but she understood the pattern. The Hippodrome, with its vast stands, fine sand, and disciplined guards, had a rhythm of fear. It was predictable, yet terrifying. The empire's architects of terror had mastered the use of delay, suspense, and public observation to create psychological wounds that lingered long after physical pain faded. Helena could feel that wound already forming inside her, invisible, deep, and irreversible. She realized in the sharp clarity of fear that she was no longer just a person. She was a symbol, a lesson, a warning. Every ripple of movement in the crowd, every murmur, every shout would echo her suffering back into the city. She understood that the Byzantines had built this arena not only to punish bodies, but to control minds, to shape behavior, and to demonstrate the full reach of imperial authority. Helena had survived the bull, but the true power of the Hippodrome lay not in physical destruction. It lay in terror.
And as the sun climbed higher, beating down on her skin, Helena's mind raced with the knowledge that what awaited her next would not merely test her body, but attempt to break her completely.
Helena's knees sank into the scorching sand as the sun climbed higher, relentless and unforgiving. Her body ached from the chains that bit into her wrists and ankles, but it was not the physical pain that consumed her. It was the awareness of every pair of eyes upon her. Every spectator, every cheer, every shout carried the weight of expectation. Helena was not just a woman in the arena. She had become a story, a lesson, a warning written in flesh and fear. The Hippodrome was alive with sound. The crowd surged like a tide, 50,000 hearts beating together, their excitement and curiosity a palpable force pressing down on her. Faces blurred together, some familiar in pattern, blues in their distinct colors, greens in theirs, but it mattered little. Loyalty, identity, and faction were irrelevant now. She had become an object, stripped of everything, entirely at the mercy of those who watched. She remembered the stories she had been told as a child, whispered by tutors and servants alike, tales that had always seemed exaggerated until now. Tales of women paraded in the arena, shorn, humiliated, their crimes often invented or exaggerated for spectacle. The purpose was never punishment alone. It was the demonstration of absolute power, a warning to every eye that might think to challenge authority. Helena now understood that those stories had been warnings, premonitions of the humiliation she was experiencing firsthand. Behind her, the gates creaked, shifting slightly as guards prepared the next stage of the spectacle. Helena dared not look. The anticipation had already taken its toll, a suffocating weight pressing down on her chest. She could hear the shuffling of feet, the low murmur of men coordinating some unknown plan. Every sound carried a hidden meaning, each step a potential harbinger of terror. She imagined their eyes assessing her fear, calculating just how much she could endure. The empire had spent centuries perfecting these methods. Her suffering was not arbitrary, but intentional, precise, crafted to achieve maximum effect. The air itself seemed heavy, thick with the sense of sweat, dust, and fear. Helena's nose burned from the combination of heat and the faint copper tang of old blood embedded in the arena floor. She shivered despite the sun, a trembling that was not from cold, but from the raw intensity of terror. She could feel it crawling through her body, igniting every nerve, making her skin hypersensitive, turning every whisper of wind into a threat. The Empire understood the potency of anticipation. Fear, Helena realized, could be more brutal than any weapon. As she knelt there, she allowed herself a brief glance at the stands. Faces stared back at her, eager and hungry, some twisted with sadistic curiosity. She saw children, men and women, members of the factions she had once known, citizens whose daily lives were otherwise ordinary, yet here they were participants in orchestrated terror. It was not just loyalty or fear of the emperor driving them, it was the human appetite for spectacle. Helena could sense the thrill in their eyes, the vicarious excitement of witnessing someone else's humiliation. Her thoughts turned to the women who had been paraded in the arena before her. Their names were mostly lost, erased by time and chroniclers, yet their suffering had left an imprint on every stone and grain of sand. These women had walked the arena circuits, shorn, stripped, mocked, beaten, and degraded. Their bodies had become instruments of public terror, their fear and shame carefully broadcast to enforce obedience and social hierarchy. Helena now understood that her experience was not unique, but part of a long continuum of cruelty, repeated for generations to maintain control. The guards behind her shifted again. Helena flinched at the sound, imagining the cruelty they might inflict. She had survived the bull, but she knew that survival was a cruel gift. It had not brought relief or safety, it had only heightened the terror. The Empire did not seek to kill every victim. Often death was too simple, too final. The real power lay in destruction of identity, in making someone live with humiliation and fear, watched by thousands. Helena felt herself become a vessel for that ancient lesson, her body and mind tools in a centuries-old system of control. As the moments stretched into what felt like hours, Helena thought of her family. The faces of her parents and siblings flickered in her mind, fragments of warmth in an ocean of fear. Were they safe? Were they aware of what had been done to her? Could they understand the full weight of the humiliation she endured? The answers were beyond her reach, just like the future that awaited her. She realized that she was alone in this moment, entirely at the mercy of the machinery of the Empire. Her suffering was both deeply personal and publicly emblematic, a dual existence she had never imagined. Helena's attention returned to the crowd, the sheer number of people, the continuity of their gaze, the way their collective attention seemed to press down on her skin. It was overwhelming. Each spectator was a witness, a participant, a silent enforcer of the Empire's authority. Their engagement was not passive, it was active complicity. In their cheers, their laughter, their gasps, the Empire had created a system in which the audience itself became a weapon, reinforcing the terror and ensuring its memory would echo long after the arena was empty. The sun blazed overhead, turning the sand into a furnace beneath her knees. Helena's mind fought against the rising panic. She focused on tiny details, the rough texture of the ropes around her wrists, the grit of sand under her fingers, the distant clatter of armor in the corridors below. These were anchors, fragile but essential, keeping her tethered to a semblance of reality. But even as she clung to them, she knew that the Empire's design was unrelenting. The spectacle was never about relief, it was about control, about breaking her in ways that could not be undone. Helena's body ached, her skin burned, her lungs gasped for air, and yet the worst part was the eyes of the crowd. She felt their focus, imagined or real, weighing her down like a physical force. she realized that the true horror of the hippodrome was not the instruments of pain themselves, the chains, the bull, the guards, but the social machinery that used fear and observation to destroy a person completely. Survival was not safety, it was a prolonged sentence of terror, a living lesson in power and control. And as Helena knelt there, trembling and exposed, she understood with piercing clarity that the hippodrome was more than an arena. It was a crucible, a place where human fear was honed into precision, where identity was stripped away, where submission was demanded not through immediate violence alone, but through anticipation, observation, and social spectacle. She had survived one stage, but the machinery of power was relentless. The next act, she knew, would be no less calculated, no less designed to teach, to terrify, and to leave an indelible mark on her soul.
Helena's back pressed against the rough sand, and she shivered despite the sun's relentless heat. Her body was exhausted, yet her mind was fully alert, sharpened by terror. Every sound, every movement in the hippodrome carried meaning. The clinking of armor in the corridors, the distant shuffle of guards, even the shifting murmur of the crowd. All were part of a meticulously orchestrated performance designed to remind her that she had no control. The hippodrome was more than a place. It was a mechanism. Its vast stone walls rose high on all sides, holding thousands of spectators like a cage of human eyes. Every brick, every row of seats, every corridor beneath the arena floor had a purpose. The Byzantines had designed it to impress, to awe, and, most importantly, to terrify. It was a stage upon which power asserted itself in the most visceral ways imaginable. Helena understood that now. She was not merely a victim, she was a participant in a centuries-old theater of obedience and fear. The anticipation was almost unbearable. The bull had been removed, but the guards moved with precision, preparing the next act. Helena's heart raced with uncertainty, each beat echoing in her chest like a drumbeat of doom. The empire thrived on this anticipation. Fear, prolonged and methodical, was a more powerful weapon than any sword. Helena could feel it deep in her bones, a weight pressing down on her spine, constricting her chest, turning her mind into a sharpened focus on survival. She thought of the other women, those who had come before her, paraded through the arena in disgrace, stripped of dignity and identity. Their names had been lost to time, yet their suffering had left an imprint in the very fabric of the hippodrome. Helena now realized she was part of that continuum, a link in a chain of terror, meticulously forged over centuries. Every glance from the crowd, every whispered conversation, every cheer was a reminder that the empire's control extended far beyond the arena floor. The sound of footsteps approached, deliberate and measured. Helena dared not move, dared not even breathe too loudly. The guards were close now, shadows moving over the sand, their presence a constant reminder of authority. Their eyes measured her fear, assessing her responses, calculating exactly how much terror she could endure. The Byzantines understood the science of anticipation. They knew that the mind could be broken just as effectively as the body, sometimes even more completely. Helena's thoughts drifted to the faction system that had shaped her life. Blues and greens, once chariot teams, now instruments of loyalty, power, and social control. The empire had long understood that allegiance could be weaponized. Entire neighborhoods were bound to factions, entire families' fates tied to political affiliation. The Nika riots had demonstrated the lethal potential of such systems. Tens of thousands slaughtered in the hippodrome to crush rebellion. Helena had survived one spectacle, but the memory of that massacre lingered like smoke over the city, a reminder that the empire's reach was absolute. The crowd continued to roar, a tide of voices that seemed to press against her very skin. Helena could feel the energy of 50,000 people focused on her, a weight heavier than any chains. Some faces were eager, some horrified, yet all were witnesses to the empire's orchestration. The Byzantines understood human psychology perfectly. They knew that when people were engaged in the suffering of others, they became invested, they became complicit. Helena could sense this complicity radiating from the stands, an invisible force that reinforced the lessons being taught in the arena. Her thoughts returned to the methods of public punishment she had heard about in stories: blinding, chariot executions, processions of shame. Each method was designed not merely to harm, but to communicate, to teach, to instill obedience. The Byzantines were meticulous in their cruelty, refining techniques over generations to ensure maximum psychological impact. Helena understood that her own ordeal with the bull was a lesson in this tradition. She had survived, yet the terror it had inflicted would linger, a permanent scar on her mind. The guards shifted again, their presence a silent warning. Helena could feel their eyes on her, assessing her reactions, ensuring she remained within the boundaries of the empire's carefully constructed fear. She had no idea what the next stage would entail, yet she knew it would be deliberate, precise, and designed to break her further. Every detail mattered: the timing, the placement, the reactions of the crowd. The hippodrome was a stage, and she was both actor and victim in a performance that had been perfected over centuries. Helena's mind sought refuge in small, tangible things: the rough texture of sand under her fingers, the grit against her palms, the heat of the sun on her skin. These were the only constants she could grasp in a sea of uncertainty. Yet even as she clung to them, she felt the empire's control closing in, a pressure that was both physical and psychological. She was alive, yet every moment was a reminder that survival was only the first step in a long, orchestrated process of humiliation and terror. She remembered the stories of Theodora, the empress who had mastered the use of the hippodrome to destroy rivals. Women stripped of silk and gold, paraded before the masses, their dignity shattered. Helena now understood that she was part of that narrative, a demonstration of power designed to send a message to anyone who might think to challenge authority. The spectacle was not random, it was purposeful. Every scream, every tear, every moment of fear was a tool in the empire's arsenal, shaping behavior, reinforcing loyalty, and instilling obedience. The sun climbed higher, burning away any sense of comfort. Helena's muscles ached, her skin was raw, and her mind was a whirlwind of terror and anticipation. Yet in that moment, she began to understand the full scope of the hippodrome's power. It was not merely an arena for entertainment, it was a crucible of obedience, a place where fear was refined into precision, where identity could be dismantled, where social control was performed in front of thousands. Helena was not alone in her suffering. She was a representation of centuries of orchestrated terror, a living example of the empire's ability to dominate, to humiliate, and to control. As the guards prepared the next stage of her ordeal, Helena took a shuddering breath. She had survived the blow, but the true challenge was still ahead. The anticipation, the fear, the exposure, these were the tools the empire wielded with skill and precision. Helena understood, with a clarity born of terror, that she was entering a phase where every nerve, every instinct, every ounce of courage would be tested. The hippodrome was a teacher of fear, and she was its pupil.
Helena's body trembled as she knelt in the sand, the sun baking her skin and the weight of the chains pressing painfully into her wrists and ankles. Each breath she drew was shallow, rapid, a reminder of her fragile control over her own body. The hippodrome, vast and unyielding, seemed to pulse with the crowd's anticipation. The spectators were silent for a moment, their collective gaze sharpening like a blade focused solely on her. Every heartbeat in the arena echoed against the stone walls, blending with her own, creating a rhythm of fear that she could not escape. The guards around her shifted, a signal that the next act of the spectacle was about to begin. Helena could hear the faint scuff of leather and the whisper of steel, the deliberate movements of men who had trained for years to enact fear as precision. The crowd leaned forward in unison, sensing the tension, hungry for the drama to unfold. Helena understood now that this was not mere entertainment. It was a calculated display of power, designed to remind everyone, spectator and victim alike, of the empire's reach, its control, its dominance over life, body, and mind. From beneath the raised stone seats, the hidden corridors carried the sound of footsteps approaching. Helena's pulse quickened, her nerves alight with the familiar burn of panic. She could smell the sweat of the guards, the dust of the arena, the faint copper tang of blood that had soaked into the sand over centuries. Every detail was magnified, each sensation intensified by fear. Helena realized that the empire's true weapon was not the bull, not the chains, not even the whip. It was the anticipation, the prolonged uncertainty that gripped her mind and heart and refused to let go. The hippodrome had been a theater of spectacle for centuries. Its original purpose, chariot racing, had evolved into something far more insidious. Power, control, and obedience were performed here, in public, with precision and cruelty. Helena had survived one form of terror, but the empire had other tools at its disposal, methods honed over generations to humiliate, degrade, and dominate. She remembered the accounts of noble women paraded, shorn of their hair, stripped of silk and gold, forced to endure ridicule in front of thousands. Every detail mattered, the timing, the placement, the reactions of the crowd. Helena was part of that continuum, a vessel for lessons centuries in the making. The guards positioned themselves around her, blocking any chance of escape. Helena's eyes darted nervously, searching for some hope, some distraction, some small way to reclaim control. But there was none. She realized that survival itself had become a stage for further torment. The empire had no intention of letting her simply live. It sought to imprint upon her the full weight of humiliation, the comprehensive destruction of dignity that left her intact in body but broken in spirit. The crowd had begun to murmur again, a low, rolling wave of voices that rose and fell like a tide. Some faces were eager, others shocked, but all were attentive, participants in a centuries-old ritual of authority. Helena felt their gaze like fire against her back, burning away any remaining hope of resistance. Each individual in the stands had been cultivated, conditioned to react with fear, delight, or complicity. The Byzantines understood human psychology with terrifying clarity. They had engineered not only the architecture of the hippodrome, but the minds of those who would fill it. Helena was now fully inside their system, an unwilling actor in a spectacle of control. The herald's voice rang out, amplified across the arena, carrying words designed to strip Helena of identity. Helena of the Blues, offspring of traitors, supporter of rebellion, enemy of the empire. The words were sharp, deliberate, each syllable a reminder of the empire's authority. Helena felt her body shudder at the sound, the humiliation searing deeper than any physical pain she had experienced. She had done nothing. Her crimes were of association,
of lineage, of loyalty. Yet here she was, on display, stripped of autonomy, made a warning to all who dared defy the system. The next act was not yet visible, but the sound told its story. Horses shifted in the distance, hooves scraping against stone floors beneath the arena. Guards whispered commands. The machinery of terror was being prepared. Helena's imagination, fueled by fear, began to paint the worst possible outcomes. Every scenario seemed plausible: attack, degradation, exposure. The Empire thrived in this uncertainty. Helena understood with a chilling clarity that this was the true spectacle. The mind's terror made tangible, the anticipation made unbearable, the helplessness absolute. She thought of the women who had come before her, paraded through the arena, their bodies a canvas for power's assertion. Some had survived, like her, only to carry the psychological scars for life. Others had been sent into exile, never to recover the dignity that had been stripped from them. Helena knew that she would emerge alive, but survival was a cruel form of punishment, a prolonged exposure to shame and fear designed to leave an indelible mark on her soul. The Hippodrome did not merely punish, it educated. It taught obedience through terror, loyalty through witness, and fear through spectacle. Helena's mind tried to resist the panic, tried to cling to fragments of thought that were her own alone. But the Empire's machinery was relentless. The crowd, the guards, the herald, the architecture itself, they worked together in perfect harmony to strip her of control. She realized that her survival had already been decided, her suffering orchestrated to achieve maximum psychological effect. The Empire had perfected this process over centuries, and Helena was the latest in a long line of lessons delivered to the people of Constantinople. The sun burned higher, and the arena seemed to shimmer in the heat. Helena's muscles screamed with fatigue. Her back stung from chains and sand, yet her mind remained fully alert. She was aware of every breath, every heartbeat, every whispered word and movement. The anticipation itself had become a weapon, a precision tool wielded by centuries of imperial knowledge. Helena understood that she was not merely enduring. She was part of a performance designed to imprint the power of the Empire on the minds of thousands, a living example of how obedience was forged through fear. And then, in the silence that preceded the next act, Helena realized the full scope of her place in this machine. She was no longer just Helena of the Blues. She was a symbol, a lesson, a warning made flesh. The crowd had not come to witness a single woman's suffering. They had come to witness the Empire's reach, the precision of its cruelty, the certainty of its authority.
Helena's fear, her humiliation, her vulnerability, they were tools, instruments in a performance centuries in the making, designed to resonate far beyond the walls of the Hippodrome.
Helena's knees dug into the sand, raw and scraped from hours of kneeling. Her hands were chains, her wrists bleeding, a constant reminder that she had no choice. The Hippodrome stretched above her, vast and unyielding, each stone row filled with thousands of eyes watching her every move. The air was thick with heat, dust, sweat, and fear. Helena could feel it pressing down on her like a physical force, heavy and relentless, a weight she could not escape. The bull had been gone, yet its presence lingered in her mind like smoke from a long-dead fire. The fear it had instilled had not left. It had burrowed deep, a constant ache, a shadow that clung to her thoughts. She understood now that this was deliberate. The Empire had engineered her terror, controlled the animal, guided it, and allowed her mind to imagine the worst. The Byzantines understood that fear itself could break a person, that anticipation could leave scars deeper than any wound. Helena's terror was complete, but the final act was yet to come. The guards moved around her, a silent choreography that she could not escape. Their boots scraped against the stone, their shadows fell over her like an invisible cage. The crowd's roar swelled once again, 50,000 voices, a living entity, hungry for the next act. Helena's eyes darted, searching for some sign, some clue as to what would happen next. She could see nothing but the sand, the shadows of the guards, and the endless tiers of spectators. Her mind raced with possibilities, each one more horrifying than the last. The herald's voice cut through the noise, crisp and deliberate. "Helena of the Blues," he announced, "offspring of traitors, supporter of rebellion, enemy of the Empire." The words were calculated, designed to strip her of identity, to humiliate her, to make her a lesson for all who watched. Helena felt her body convulse with the weight of shame. She had done nothing but be born into the wrong family, aligned with the wrong faction. Yet here she was, exposed to thousands, a living symbol of what defiance could cost. The Empire's methods were precise. Helena could feel the machinery of control moving around her, each detail orchestrated for maximum effect. Guards whispered to one another, preparing the instruments of terror. The crowd leaned forward, senses sharpened, anticipating the next moment of spectacle. Helena realized that the Hippodrome was not merely a stage, it was a weapon. Its architecture, audience, and participants all designed to enforce obedience through fear. Helena remembered the women who had come before her, paraded through the arena, their hair shorn, their silk replaced with rags, their dignity stripped away. She was part of the same continuum, a demonstration of centuries of orchestrated humiliation. Every cheer, every gasp, every sound in the arena reinforced the Empire's power, its control over body and mind. Helena knew that this was the ultimate lesson. Survival alone was not enough. The memory of humiliation had to remain, a permanent mark on her soul. The next stage began subtly. A rope was brought forward, anchored to a post in the center of the arena. Helena could feel its presence before she saw it, a new instrument in the Empire's toolkit. The guards moved with precision, guiding her to stand, chains still restricting her movement. Helena's body shook, exhaustion mixing with fear. She understood that every motion, every forced step was part of a larger design, a demonstration for the audience that obedience was non-negotiable. The crowd's murmur grew into a roar as the guards positioned her in the center, the ropes circling her wrists and ankles in a controlled manner. Helena's mind raced, imagining the worst. Would they lift her, tie her to a horse, drag her across the sand? Would the bull return? Her imagination, fueled by terror, painted scenes more horrific than anything the Empire could physically inflict. And that was the point. The Byzantines understood the power of fear left to the mind, the terror created by what could be rather than what was. The rope was pulled tight, restricting movement further, yet the guards did not strike, did not harm her beyond the chains and the rope. Helena realized the lesson. The Empire could dominate without killing, could humiliate without bloodshed, could break spirit through anticipation, exposure, and absolute control. She was helpless, yet alive. Her survival itself was a form of punishment, a prolonged engagement with fear and shame that left her mentally shattered. The herald spoke again, detailing her supposed crimes, her lineage, her loyalty to the wrong faction. Every word was a carefully constructed narrative, reinforcing the lesson to the spectators. Helena's identity was being rewritten in public, recast as a warning, a symbol of what happens to those who oppose imperial authority. The crowd absorbed it, reacting with the cultivated responses of centuries of performance. Some jeered, some gasped, some silently acknowledged the lesson. Helena was aware that her suffering was now a story, a tool for shaping the behavior of all who witnessed it. Time stretched, minutes becoming hours, though Helena could not measure them. Every moment of exposure, every heartbeat, every glance from the crowd reinforced the Empire's control. She understood that the spectacle's purpose was complete. Her mind had been broken, her dignity eroded, and her survival ensured that the lesson would persist. Helena was no longer merely herself. She was a warning, a narrative of fear, a demonstration of the empire's capacity for psychological mastery. Finally, the rope was removed, the guards guiding her back to kneeling in the sand. Helena collapsed, exhausted, trembling, her mind reeling from the intensity of prolonged fear. The crowd erupted in reaction, a mixture of relief, awe, and complicity. Helena had survived, yet she was changed forever. The empire's lesson was indelibly printed upon her psyche, a permanent reminder of the power of anticipation, control, and humiliation. Helena was released the next day, sent into exile, her life forever marked by the spectacle she had endured. She had survived, but the empire had achieved its objective. She would carry the memory of humiliation, fear, and exposure for the rest of her life. Other noble families, other women, other citizens, all had witnessed the spectacle in various forms, learned the lesson without experiencing it directly. The Hippodrome of Constantinople stood as a monument to human cruelty, political manipulation, and the terrifying sophistication of an empire that had mastered the art of public spectacle. Helena's ordeal, the bull, the chains, the rope, and the crowd's gaze all were part of a centuries-old pattern of control, humiliation, and fear. The empire had refined these methods over generations, ensuring that obedience was maintained, rebellion punished, and memory weaponized. And so, Helena became both survivor and symbol, a reminder of the consequences of defiance, the power of anticipation, and the empire's mastery over body and mind. The Hippodrome of Constantinople remained, its stones still echoing with the screams, the gasps, and the lessons of those who had come before, a silent but enduring witness to the terrifying reality of Byzantine spectacle.